Hey, welcome to Chapter 8, Week 8. Couple quick videos here. You just get me this week, so we're going to talk. Chapter 8 is pretty short. We're going to do some trading in our stock track this week, which in our personal financial plan. But the book, I'm just having you go through the first 5 sections. Pretty quick stuff and very interesting stuff. We're going to talk about behavioral finance, right? Which is the study and understand how reasoning errors influence investor decisions and market pricing. What you're going to learn in this chapter is that people really make decisions based on things they shouldn't make decisions on, whether it be emotional, and it's interesting on the behavior of such things. They're going to talk about something called prospect theory, which I find very interesting. So investors are more distressed about losses than they are happy about their gains. So they get much more emotional if they buy a stock and it loses money, than if they buy a stock and a gain, it increases by double. And much more distressed by that loss. And 2 times is great. They've done a lot of studies on this. So people are really apt to maybe take a sure gain versus risking a loss, even though the reward on the risk might be a lot bigger. So a lot of folks tend to be more conservative, and what the book refers to as risk averse, right? So if I offer you $10, sure thing, I just give you $10. Or I say, I'll tell you what, we're gonna flip this coin, and if it comes up head, I'm gonna give you $50. But if it comes up tails, you owe me 100. So folks will look at that and they'll look at that loss versus taking the $10. So let's take the $10 and walk away. So obviously it depends on what that risk reward is. It depends on what kind of person you are. You might be a risk taker. I've read some of you folks out there, I think, are risk takers. There's nothing wrong with that. You just have to kind of accept the consequences of that. So you'll either be risk averse or you'll have risk taking behavior, and you can vary between the two, right? We'll talk about that in a little bit. And then there's something else in there I want you to concentrate on called frame dependence. There's a couple of scenarios in the book similar to what I just said, as far as you have a sure bet versus different scenarios of if this happens or that happens. What's very interesting is just how people react to those things when the math might even be equal in both cases. Another thing they talk about in is called loss aversion. So it's kind of your reluctance to sell after something drops. So this is very interesting. People will buy a stock, and let's say it drops $10, and they'll sit there and they'll be worried about it, and they're like, oh, I think it'll come back. I think it'll come back. Well, odds are it might not come back. People will sit and they'll hold and they'll hold and they'll hold. The reality is when you buy and sell stocks, and I've done this over my lifetime, sometimes they do well. Most of the time, if you buy well and hold for a long period of time, it will go up. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they tank. Sometimes you took a chance and that fund just happens to drop. Get out of it. If there's good reasons why it dropped, people tend to not be able to pull the trigger on a loss. Sometimes you just have to do that, and that's what loss aversion is, or they call it get even-itis. Well, I'll just or the stock will drop and they'll be like, oh, I'll just buy more, and that way when it comes back up, I'll make twice as much. It doesn't work most of the time because it might drop again. So now you're twice as depressed. So pay attention to that part of the book and think about that mentally as you go through your investing over the years. Is that break-even effect can often kind of nip you in the butt twice. So if you make an investment, it's a bad investment, get out, move on, chalk it up to experience. There's also something called mental accounting. This is very interesting. I've been to Las Vegas quite a few times, and I see this occurring, right? It's the concept of house money, right? So people will take and they'll segment their money into different mental accounting buckets. So you've got your retirement accounts over here, and maybe you're conservative in those. And then you have this investment account over here, and you're I know some of you are like, I'm just going to invest that, very risky, and I'm going to find the next big stock, and I'm going to make $1 million. And you might. But what you've done there is you have 2 separate mental accounting buckets. Let's say you're in Las Vegas and you're gambling a little bit and you're up $100. The tendency is to use that house money, that $100 that you really haven't put in your bank account. You really haven't mentally counted as your money. It's somebody else's money. You tend to be a lot more risky with that. So that's why the house wins in Vegas, right? You're up 100, and then you're like, well, I'm up 100. I might as well bet $50 on this hand because it's not my money anyway, and I might hit big. And then what happens? You lose, and you end up with zero. So it's an interesting concept. Apply that to now your investing style, and think about that. So it's okay to be that way. It's okay to have some risk money that's fun to gamble with on the side. Make sure you've got all of your other investments, set and ready and in the right investment strategy for your particular goal, before you have that little side risk taking to go. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can get rich and you can be a millionaire. But that concept is very interesting. There's some terms in the book on page 259, similar to what I just talked about, called myopic loss aversion, regret aversion. So the tendency to focus on avoiding a short-term loss, and regret aversion. So I bet on a stock last week and it tanked. I better not do that again because that same thing will happen again. That gets you stuck in this, well, it went bad the last time. What happens if it happens this time? You become kind of paralyzed. So be in the middle there, right? Invest wisely, take your losses when they come. Most of the time, if you invest wisely and you follow the market, if you're in an index fund or your retirement fund, it will go up steadily, and you won't have to worry about some of these things. They talk about sunk cost fallacy, which is what I just talked about, where stock drops and you buy more because you know it's going to go up. Sometimes that works, but in that case, you might be making the same mistake twice. And then there's a couple other effects you can read about in there. The endowment effect and the money illusion is, other concepts along these same lines of frame dependence, which is really how your mind is looking at a particular situation. So enjoy that in the book, and these were just kind of my notes to help you focus on the important stuff.